The Earth truly died once. 66 million years ago, dinosaurs went extinct, you've surely heard. 75% of species disappeared. That's tragic enough, right? But that was just Earth's sneeze. The real extinction happened 252 million years ago. 96% of marine life died and 70% of terrestrial life perished. Insects, a species never severely harmed in mass extinctions, had 1/3 of their numbers wiped out. Life on Earth was nearly eradicated. Scientists named this catastrophe the Great Dying. Not the Great Extinction, but the Great Dying. Because the word extinction isn't enough to describe the horror of that disaster. You might ask, what exactly happened? The answer is, no one knows. Dinosaur extinction has conclusive evidence of an asteroid impact, but the culprit of the Permian mass extinction remains a mystery. Scientists have argued for over 100 years, proposing dozens of theories, from volcanic eruptions to ocean anoxia, from methane leaks to cosmic rays. Each one has evidence, yet each one also has flaws. The only certainty is that the disaster lasted a full 60,000 years. Not an instant destruction, but a long, desperate torment, watching life slowly vanish. What sent chills down scientists' spines was finding the exact same warning signs in modern oceans as 252 million years ago. That disaster, which killed 96% of all life, might be repeating itself. Let's first go back before the disaster and look at the world that was about to be destroyed. 252 million years ago, Earth was completely different from today. At that time, there was no Atlantic, no Indian Ocean. All the land masses were squeezed together, forming a supercontinent. Scientists called it Pangaea. Looking down from space, it was like a giant jigsaw puzzle. All the pieces hadn't scattered yet. That was an era of unprecedented prosperity for life. Trilobites roamed the seabed for a full 300 million years, twice as long as dinosaurs existed. They lived from the Cambrian to the Permian, witnessing the rise and fall of countless species, several mass extinctions, yet survived every single time. They believed they would exist forever. Sea scorpions were the most terrifying hunters of their time, the largest growing up to 2.5 meters, with claws as sharp as scissors. They dominated the seabed for hundreds of millions of years, at the top of the food chain, with no natural predators. The land was also bustling. Though the golden age of giant insects had passed, strange creatures still roamed the jungles. There were also creatures, part lizard, part mammal, called therapsids. They were your ancestors' ancestors. Everything seemed normal. The sun rose, the sea hit the shore, life thrived, with no sign of the end approaching. Then disaster struck. No one knows what happened on the first day. No witnesses, no records. Only fossils in rock layers silently tell that history. Scientists can only piece together the outline of that catastrophe from tiny clues. The first to suffer was the ocean. Fossil records show that marine life went extinct the fastest. Trilobites, sea scorpions, corals, and shellfish almost simultaneously began to die off en masse. Not in one region, but in all global seas at the same time. What does this tell us? This shows it wasn't a local issue, but such issue, but a problem with the Earth's entire ocean environment. And scientists found a strange phenomenon in late Permian rock layers. Rocks from that time showed almost no trace of oxygen. The oceans turned into a silent, anoxic, deadly hell. But the question is, where did the oxygen go? Some say it's ocean stratification and rising temperatures, preventing surface and deep waters from mixing, so oxygen can't reach the deep sea. Others say decaying organic matter, after many creatures died, consumed all the oxygen in the ocean. But these are just results, not the cause. The real question is, what led to the temperature increase? What triggered this chain reaction? There's a hypothesis. It was once quite a sensation, known as the methane gun hypothesis. Deep beneath the ocean floor, there are vast amounts of methane hydrates, commonly known as flammable ice. Under normal circumstances, they remain peacefully in place. But should the ocean's temperature increase to a certain critical threshold, these compounds would then suddenly decompose, unleashing an enormous volume of methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas 80 times stronger than carbon dioxide. Once released, temperatures rise faster, more methane is released. This is a death spiral that once started cannot be stopped. Scientists have calculated that if all methane hydrates on the seabed were released, the resulting greenhouse effect would be enough to send Earth's temperature soaring by over 10 degrees. This could fully explain the extreme heat at the end of the Permian period. But the question is, what triggered the initial warming? Methane release is just an amplifier, not the starting point. Others have proposed the cosmic ray hypothesis. They suggest that as the solar system crossed the Milky Way, it might have passed through a high radiation zone where cosmic rays destroyed the ozone layer. UV radiation directly hit the surface, killing plants and devastating the ecosystem. This hypothesis sounds quite sci-fi, but it lacks direct evidence. Moreover, cosmic rays cannot explain the problem of ocean anoxia. The debate lasted decades until the early 21st century, when scientists finally found key evidence in one place, Siberia. Beneath the vast Siberian landscape of Russia, a terrifying entity lay buried. The Siberian Traps, one of Earth's largest volcanic events. This wasn't just one volcano, but an entire volcanic complex covering an area the size of Europe, 7 million square kilometers. Scientists, using isotope dating methods, discovered that the eruption period of this volcanic cluster perfectly coincided with the Permian Triassic mass extinction, with a margin of error of only a few tens of thousands of years. On the vast geological timescale, this is considered to be the exact same moment. The shocking truth has finally come to the surface. The culprit that wiped out 96% of all life on Earth was not an asteroid nor cosmic rays, but the Earth's own heart, beating wildly out of control. The Siberian Traps eruption wasn't a typical volcanic blast. It lasted a million years. For a million years, magma ceaselessly flowed. Volcanic ash covered the sky and toxic gases filled the air. Scientists estimate this eruption released over 10,000 times the carbon dioxide of all human emissions in history. Sulfur dioxide, hydrogen chloride, fluorides, and various toxic gases flooded the atmosphere, turning the sky into a gas chamber. Then, a chain reaction began. First, the greenhouse effect. Massive amounts of carbon dioxide entered the atmosphere and the Earth's temperature began to soar. The global average temperature rose by over 10 degrees and seawater in equatorial regions reached 40 degrees. This wasn't seawater, it was a hot bath. Then, there's ocean acidification. Carbon dioxide dissolves in the seawater, forming carbonic acid. The ocean's pH value drops sharply, changing from weakly alkaline to acidic. All shelled creatures, their shells begin to dissolve. Trilobites' shells slowly thin in the acidic water, eventually disappearing completely. Their exposed bodies are then exposed to the seawater and they die. Next is methane release. Seawater temperature rises, triggering the decomposition of methane hydrates. Trillions of tons of methane gush out from the seabed. The greenhouse effect is multiplied. Temperatures rise even higher. More methane is released. The death spiral officially begins. Then comes ocean anoxia. High temperatures intensify ocean stratification. The exchange between surface and deep layers almost stops. Furthermore, massive numbers of organisms died and decayed, depleting the remaining oxygen in the seawater. Large ocean areas became dead zones where no oxygen-breathing life could survive. Finally, the destruction of the ozone layer. Volcanic chlorides and bromides entered the atmosphere, beginning to break down ozone molecules. This created vast holes in the ozone layer. Ultraviolet rays directly hit the surface, destroying plant DNA, preventing photosynthesis. Animals' skin was burned and their eyes were blinded. 5 simultaneous blows are descending upon us. The greenhouse effect, ocean acidification, methane release, ocean anoxia, and ozone layer destruction. Any one of these alone would be enough to cause a mass extinction, but all 5 together spell a great death. How did the trilobites die? First, their shells were eroded by acidified seawater. After their shells thinned, their ability to regulate temperature decreased and they began to be scorched by high temperatures. Then, oxygen in the seawater became scarcer and they began to suffocate. They desperately crawled towards shallow waters, wanting to breathe one last breath of oxygen. But the shallow waters were even hotter, able to boil them alive. Climbing up meant death. Staying put also meant death. They had no choice. This species, which existed on Earth for 300 million years, became extinct in despair. How did the sea scorpions die? Their massive bodies needed a lot of oxygen, but the ocean's oxygen dwindled. They began to suffocate, to struggle. Their swimming slowed, and one by one, they sank to the seabed. The former ocean overlords turned into fossils in the sediment. How did the coral reefs die? Acidified ocean waters dissolved their calcium carbonate skeletons, high temperatures caused them to bleach, and entire coral reefs perished within mere millennia. Countless species that depended on these coral reefs for survival also went extinct. An entire ecosystem which had thrived for hundreds of millions of years simply collapsed. On land, creatures also died off in massive numbers, and plants withered across vast areas due to intense UV radiation and extreme heat. Herbivores starved without food, and carnivores starved without prey. The entire food chain collapsed from the bottom all the way to the top. This slaughter lasted for 60,000 years. Over 60,000 years, life on Earth slowly vanished. Not a sudden instant destruction, but a long, desperate agony of watching their kind perish in droves, utterly powerless to intervene. Scientists say perhaps those who died are the lucky ones. For the survivors, we'll face a world more terrifying than death. After the mass extinction, Earth entered an era called the Injuan period that was the darkest 2 million years in Earth's history. The global average temperature was over 40 degrees Celsius. The atmospheric oxygen content was only 12%, equivalent to a mountain 5,000 meters high today. The oceans were almost dead and the land was almost empty. The creatures that survived barely clung to life in a hellish environment, but there were always some species that made it through. They weren't the strongest nor the largest, but rather the most adaptable. Some hid in deep ocean corners, some burrowed into the soil, others, due to their small size, needed fewer resources and just barely managed to survive. These survivors became the seeds for future life on Earth. One branch slowly evolved over tens of millions of years, eventually becoming dinosaurs. Without the Great Dying, there would be no dinosaurs. Without dinosaurs, there would be no later rise of mammals. Without the rise of mammals, there would be no you. In a sense, your very existence is because 96% of all life perished 252 million years ago. But the story doesn't end there. In 2023, an international research team published a paper in Science magazine comparing marine data from before and after the Permian extinction with modern ocean data, and the results left everyone speechless. The current rate of ocean acidification is 10 times faster than during the mass extinction. The current rate of carbon emissions is 10 times faster than during the mass extinction. And the current rate of warming is 10 times faster than during the mass extinction. All indicators are pointing in the same direction, one we're unwilling to face. Scientists don't know where the tipping point is, nor how much more carbon emissions are needed to trigger the next mass extinction. They only know that once that line is crossed, there's no turning back. Trilobites don't speak, sea scorpions won't warn us. They just lie quietly in rock layers, turning into fossils, waiting to be excavated. But if they could speak, I think they would say, we existed on Earth for 300 million years, thinking we'd last forever. And what happened? You humans have only been here for hundreds of thousands of years. Are you sure you won't be the next us?